Hey folks, it's Phelan McPhalen. It's a Wednesday afternoon here in Dallas, Texas. It's a beautiful afternoon. I know I keep saying that, but we're having some really nice weather. It's finally starting to cool up a little bit. I'm out here on my walk, and it just is great. It's a little bit warm, but it's a lot cooler than it's been. So, you've probably already noticed that I've changed my channel name back to my name again, because I was getting some feedback from folks who said that it was confusing seeing Full Preterist Anonymous. They were thinking I was a full preterist, which I'm not. I'm not even a preterist. So I decided I was going to change my name back again. Still the same channel, still the same ministry, all that, but figured I'd just change it up. Also to expand, hopefully, my audience a little to people who maybe are not really that interested in the doctrines of preterism, or just interested in other, some of the things I have to talk about. Even though my ministry has been and always will be, dealing with preterist futurist relations, I still think that it's important to have a more generalized approach. So I was posting yesterday on Don Preston's forum. I was basically piggybacking off my blog yesterday about, the red heifer and the significance, that it has prophetic significance, but it doesn't have any soteriological significance. It is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin. Always was, always will be. So that was never a question in my mind. The point that I was trying to make is that it's a sign. All of these types and ordinances, they all foreshadow Christ. So any kind of resuscitation of the Levitical ordinances will and can serve as an indirect testimony to the gospel. An object lesson, if you please. So it's important because this is what's going to be used by Messianic Jews to bring about a revival of Christianity within Judaism. And this is going to happen. And that's why I wanted to kind of piggyback off that concept today, talk about the coming Jewish revival. Because I made some comments that, some people didn't like. And, I'm sorry, but, I'm going to speak what I feel to be the truth of Scripture every time. And I'm not going to be bullied. I'm certainly not going to be cowed into preaching something that's not scriptural. So I wanted to make that point clear, because I believe we're at a juncture right now in our history, whether it be our national history or the history of the world, however you want to consider it. The Gentile nations are at a juncture right now where we're about to get cut off from that olive tree, and the Jews are about to be grafted back in. And this was foretold, this was predicted plainly, and he didn't spell it out, explicitly, but he did say this is what's going to happen if you are not faithful. He's talking to the Gentiles, as a corporate group. He's talking about the lopping off of the Jews from the olive tree as a corporate group. They would lose their corporate privileges, and then the Gentiles would be grafted in. They would inherit those corporate privileges. They would inherit the leasehold of the vineyard. But the thing is, you have to remember that is only a leasehold. That's what that parable signifies. We're talking about the tenants, the husbandmen. They were leaseholders. They were not the owners. So, for many centuries, Christianity has bore fruit. It's done its job. It's done its business. It's saved souls. It's raised up spiritual men. And it's edified and it's instructed society. But there came a point where that all started to wind down. And I don't care whether you say it was, during the First World War, the Second World War, whenever that was, there was a point where it started to wind down, and all that good that was done began to be reversed. Now we're at a stage right now where, and y'all have to put it in perspective, because if you don't have that historic perspective, you're going to lose sight of the whole equation. Now we're at a point where you've got the Gentile nations that previously stood staunchly for the doctrines of the Christian faith, they've outdistanced themselves from Christianity. There's been a de-Christianization in the public policies of basically almost every Christian nation in the world. What gets me is how any Christian nation could have allowed the Holocaust to happen. We have to remember that Germany was nominally a Christian nation. They considered themselves a Christian nation. Hitler considered himself a Christian. Can you believe that? And considered himself a Christian. And during that time, where was the church when all of these policies were being implemented? Where were the ministers and where were the theologians to point out, hey, wait a minute here. You can't persecute the Jews. You can't round them up in concentration camps and kill them. You can't. This scripture says, no, there was none of that. And I understand that the pressure of public opinion may have been against any kind of dissent, towards Hitler and his policies. I understand that. At the same time, though, we have to understand that the theology, that big, denominational gentilic theology made all that possible because the theologians of the church, of Germany's church at least, and also of the other churches of Christendom, their theology taught that the Jews were disinherited and that the church inherited all the promises. So they walked right into that one. And because of that doctrine of replacement theology, that allowed something like the Holocaust to happen. That allowed all the anti-Semitism that we've seen over the centuries. The 15th century, Ferdinand and Isabella, Spain running all the Jews off, stealing their property. In the name of the church, in the name of Christendom, it's all because of that faulty interpretation where if you had somebody to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, it says that the Jews will be restored as a nation. It says that the kingdom belongs to Israel. The kingdom will be given to Israel. And this is what it actually says. It didn't say the Jews were cut off. It didn't say the Jews would be destroyed. Here's the terms of the new covenant. Jeremiah 31, it said the Jews would be preserved as a nation. It said that the Gentiles are partaking of their spiritual things. Their spiritual things, not our spiritual things. It says that the Gentiles are being grafted in, are partaking of their covenantal privileges, of the covenants of promise made with whom? With Israel. But of course we didn't have theologians to stand up and to say that, to contend for those points. It wasn't until the 19th century, really, that anybody began to systematically expound the prophecies of Scripture according to a normative, literal hermeneutic and see that, yes, this is so, that what Paul was saying in Romans chapter 11 goes right along with what the Old Testament Scriptures are speaking in regards to Israel. So where we're at right now is we're at a juncture where the Gentiles are about to be cut off, the Jews are about to be grafted in. So everything that we're seeing now with this revival of Judaic Christianity and Hebrew-centered Christianity are the advanced outposts of a shift back to the Jews and away from the Gentiles. And what's going to happen is that the Gentile nations, including America, are going to plunge farther into apostasy during the next few years, that the national centers are going to be broken down. Now, you may see a revival of fascism. In fact, this is already starting to happen in America. There's revivals of fascism. If fascism is a prequel to what? World War, right? So you remember the history of Europe in the 20th century. You had these fascists, you had Mussolini, you had Hitler, and then look what happened. So when the pendulum swings too far to the right, what's going to happen is it causes the pendulum to swing back to the left. So don't think that just because you're seeing a revival of fascism within the public sector, or religious sector, or however you want to view it, however you want to phrase it, don't think that that's a sign that things are getting better, because that's a sign that there's going to be a stronger reaction in the other direction following that movement. So let's just put everything in perspective and be honest with ourselves, and we'll see that that's the case. So all these people, in the church that are, these Christian nationalists that are, bippity-boppity-boo, the church is going to rule the world, setting themselves up for a downfall. They're setting themselves up for failure, and they will be mercilessly treated once the pendulum swings back in the other direction. But we're not concerned about that. What we're concerned about now is the next few years. And the trend, based on current trends, it's obvious to me the Gentiles are going to be cut off, and then God is going to return to the Jews. There's going to be a tremendous revival of Judaic Christianity in the land of Palestine. It's going to bring about that latter rain. We hear that phrase mentioned in the prophets. We also hear James mention that phrase, latter rain. There was a former rain on the day of Pentecost. It's going to be a latter rain before Christ comes again. It's going to be a revival of Judaistic Christianity. It's going to be centered in the Holy Land. And it's going to bring about a revival of the Pentecostal gifts. What you're going to see is the gospel of the kingdom preached with power and authority once more by godly Jews who have those Pentecostal gifts. And they're going to be persecuted viciously by the leftist element by the religious leadership. But that's something we can't go into now. But they are going to bring about that revival. They're going to raise up that 144,000. So seeing something like the red heifer and seeing all of these prophetically significant events take place, they're just the feelers, if you will, that let us know what's coming around the corner. So some interesting stuff and some things to think about, because the Gentiles have really had their day. And I mean, you can't walk in any church today and see that things have become totally corrupted. I mean, the word is just, most of these big denominational branches, they all have one element in common. None of them believe the promises made to Israel. They all appropriate those promises to themselves. And I will grant you that the Baptists are not like that. Southern Baptists aren't like that. And I'm a Baptist. So I've been around enough Baptist churches to understand that they don't teach that. They actually do believe in the salvation of Israel. So that's a plus in their direction. But most of the other ones don't. And that's what we have to contend with. We have to contend with that anti-Semitism. We have to contend with that despisal of Israel's privileges. We have to contend with that stealing from Israel and spiritualizing all of the blessings and appropriating them to ourselves while literalizing all the curses and leaving Israel holding the bag while we get a free ride at their expense. So anyways, didn't want to make it too long today. I just wanted to kind of bring that out, kind of piggyback on what I said yesterday, because a lot of people, they don't understand, they've been so conditioned, to accept those doctrines of supersessionism, of replacement theology, that they just don't understand anymore. You can't explain it clearly anymore. You have to just basically have to teach them the whole Bible all over again, and that just takes too much time. So anyways, thanks again for tuning in. Thank you for your thoughts, your comments, your suggestions, your observations, and your critiques. Really do appreciate it. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. I'll try to be back tomorrow. In the meantime, thanks again, and take it easy. Bye.